Welcome, my friends, to the 500th episode of the Content Inc. podcast. I know, crazy, right? If you're a regular listener, you know that I generally give a 3 to 5 minute lesson on something related to content creation or content entrepreneurship. Now, this being a very special occasion, we're going to touch on a number of subjects in no particular order. First off, a big thanks to all of you for your notes and your kind words, especially my friend Bert Van Loon, who sent this special Cinquecento Italiano hat, which if you're watching on YouTube, and you should be, I'm wearing. Very thoughtful of you, my friend. Now, in going back, I actually didn't know precisely when this podcast was started. My Libsyn account stats tell me that episode 1 was published December 4th of 2014, and it was called Defeating Goliath Requires Different Thinking, where I ran through Malcolm Gladwell's story about the real story behind David and Goliath. Now, that piece ended up in the introduction of the first edition of the Content Inc. book. The basic gist was that David couldn't beat Goliath in hand-to-hand combat. Goliath was, by all accounts, 6 foot, 9 inches tall. He was very slow, carrying in addition 100 pounds of armor, and some medical experts say Goliath suffered from a hormone imbalance where his vision was most likely impaired because he was so large. Now, the short story is that David could not win in hand-to-hand combat. So instead of fighting in the traditional manner, super fast David slung stones at Goliath from a distance and killed him. Quite easily, actually. So this story becomes the central idea of the Content Inc. model. You, the single-person business, creating a content-first, audience-first business model, actually have a huge advantage over cost-heavy, resource-heavy businesses, but we have to play the game differently. Specifically, build the marketing first and the audience, and launch the product second, which is how the Content Inc. business model works. And I have to tell you, I've become super judgy about this over the years. When an entrepreneur comes up to me with an idea for a product to sell, and they start with pitching the product and all the things that go into creating and distributing the product, I just feel sorry for them. Not that it won't work. Some of it actually works very well, but it's so much more difficult a model than building an audience that knows, likes, and trusts us, and then selling them products and services that they really need, and oftentimes they ask for it. So back to the origin story. December 4th, the first podcast, I started producing 2 per week. I sent them every Monday and Tuesday, and then sometimes 2 on Monday, 5 minutes in length. The goal was to work to build interest in the Content Inc. book, which was to be released and was released in September of 2015. Now, much of the podcast content became book content, a podcast to book strategy, if you will. I could also see what was resonating with the listeners, which was very helpful for the success of the book. And I gave myself 9 months on the podcast to build enough interest for the book launch, which took place in person in Cleveland at Content Marketing World 2015 at the 9 Hotel Vault. Great venue, by the way. Now, the podcast was one of many factors that made the book successful. And if you add up all the book sales, print, ebook, and audiobook sales for Content Inc., we've sold over 100,000 copies, and it's been my best-selling book, even eclipsing Epic Content Marketing, which did pretty well also, but Content Inc. was by far the winner. Episode 200 of the Content Inc. podcast was recorded on August 9th of 2017, where I announced I was stopping the podcast. A year earlier, my wife and I sold Content Marketing Institute, and my last day at CMI was to be the end of 2017. The plan was to make 2018 my sabbatical year, where I basically stopped doing anything content marketing related. I remember, January was fun. My wife and I, we had the month of fun. I was off electronics entirely. We had something planned every day. We went to the art museum, went to the casino, we went to movies. We did all kinds of fun stuff, and it was a celebration that the two of us worked so hard to get to, and it was just a lot of fun. And Pam, we should do that again. Now, at the same time, I also stopped doing the This Old Marketing podcast with Robert Rose. Robert wasn't happy about that. So that was it for this podcast. That was it for This Old Marketing Podcast. The plan was not to continue to do anything in those areas until COVID. Now, for my wife and I, 2020 was going to be our big travel year. And you know how that worked out. So as my plans changed, so did many of my friends' plans. Some who lost their corporate jobs, others who were searching for a new purpose. It got a lot of people to think differently about what they wanted to do for a living. We were all sort of searching. And with the additional texts and emails I was receiving from these kind of people, specifically about ones that I covered in the Content Inc. book and in the Content Inc. podcast, I decided, to the dismay of my wife, to restart the podcast and begin the second edition of the Content Inc. book. Just taking a little break here, enjoying a little coffee. I drink more coffee these days. If you've been listening to some of the other podcasts, I'm into time-based eating. So I eat from noon to 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I drink a lot more coffee. So thank you, Coffee Bean. So in March of 2020, we restarted the podcast, which led to another successful book publishing effort of Content Inc. in May of 2021. And of course, when we do anything, we've got to go big or go home. I launched a new business in April of 2021 called The Tilt, a newsletter resource for content creators who wanted to be content entrepreneurs. Also started Content Entrepreneur Expo, which was initially called Creator Economy Expo. By the way, CEX is August 24th to 26th in Cleveland this year. I would like to see you there. And then we took that entire model, newsletter and the event, and sold it to book printing company Lulu, fantastic company, who since added the business Tilt Publishing, an incredible hybrid publishing service for content creators. Now, my next book, Burn the Playbook, which is a continuation of my Content Inc. journey, will be published through Tilt Publishing and launch at CEX this year. Now, although I am still active in the business and will be hosting the event, I don't actually run anything, which is best for everyone. Right, Laura? I know you'd agree with that. So now, from the start in December of 2014 to now June of 2025, we've had over 2 million downloads of the Content Inc. podcast, and it's been a pretty important part of my personal content plan for well over 10 years now. That's the backstory. Probably a bit longer than I wanted. I tend to talk. So, where do we go now with this? I feel like I need to leave you with some deep thoughts, as Jack Handey would say, some learnings from the previous 499 episodes, and here are some in no particular order. Number one, if you want a crazy successful podcast, don't do a solo podcast like Content Inc. Now, we've had great listenership. Thank you so much. It is much easier to grow a show that has guests on it because you get to tap into a new network for every episode. Number two, if you want an easy to produce podcast, absolutely do not have guests. Content Inc. is so easy to produce. It's just me. I record whenever I want. No scheduling issues. I can produce a whole month of podcasts in a day if I choose to. Done and done. Number three, the podcast to book method is completely underrated. With the ease of transcription today, I'd like to see more people employ this. If you have any kind of successful podcast out there, producing a book is really not a chore. I highly recommend it. And of course, we've got Tilt Publishing to help you if you want to go that direction. Number four, if I was starting over today with the podcast, I think Content Inc. would be cut up into 10 little videos per week instead of one podcast. I just think that's the right way to go. So you'd have that, and your Not Rented Land e-newsletter would be a very powerful combo. I've been thinking about something like this for the Burn the Playbook launch, but I'm not sure I have the energy for it, to be honest with you. But I think it would work. Short videos, test like crazy on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, CTA to the book and the newsletter. Now, a couple more thoughts before I go. I don't think Content Inc. is any great podcast by any means. I think it's successful because I show up every week, like Norm Peterson from the Cheers television show. That momentum and presence is important, maybe the most important. I've heard and seen dozens of great podcasts that just stopped or were too inconsistent to gain a following. Showing up over a long period of time really seems to be the hardest thing to do in content creation. I can't tell you how many times in the last 5 years I was done with this podcast. Even now I'm thinking I should be done with it. Maybe you want me to be done with it as well. Now, the biggest mistake with this podcast, stopping it in 2017. I don't regret the decision by any means, but we never gained the audience back that we had from that point after we stopped for 2.5 years. The same thing, by the way, with This Old Marketing. We stopped that show for 1.5 years, and we've never been able to get that old audience back. Some people who were listeners still don't know the show is back on. I run into people at events all the time and say, what happened to This Old Marketing? I'm like, we've been back on for 5 years. It's crazy. So if you have a podcast and you want to take a sabbatical and you don't want to lose your listeners, plan some special episodes to keep people tuning in. It only takes one missed episode and you can lose your audience forever. There are simply too many other options out there. All right, coming to the end. Finally, some big picture thoughts to end with a bang. I am blessed to have a bit of perspective. I've just turned 52, been in the content marketing industry for 25 years now, and I've been a content creator for almost 20 years. Here's some thoughts. Number one, I don't believe in retirement anymore. There is only the next project, that thing that gets you excited to get up in the morning. Everyone I know who's in retirement is not happy and not healthy. Who wants that? Number two, I have nothing against people who work for others. I'm actually envious on occasion of some of my friends who work for someone else during the day, but can completely forget everything about work until they go back the next day. But I believe it's a fool's game for somebody like me. My goal is to have control over my life and the decisions I make. I can't do that if I have a salary for someone else. That means someone else determines if I work, how much I get for my time, and they determine the projects I work on. Forget that. Content entrepreneurship is the greatest business model in the world because I can control all my time, the time with my family, my financial decisions. Now, for many, it doesn't mean you'll be wealthy, but you absolutely will be free. Number three, as I grow older, I understand more that time is the most important asset, especially time with the people you love. If what you do takes away from the people you love, you might want to rethink your plan. And number four, I wouldn't be here without the people who supported me, especially my wife, Pam. She has and continues to make me a better person, husband, and father. And if you have a Pam in your life, make sure you say thank you every day. In closing, right? Finally, I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. Beside the business aspects of the show, I always wanted this to be motivational for you. I envision you are mostly like me, where content creation is difficult. Oftentimes, you don't want to stay the course, and you need someone to remind you how important it is what you are doing. And it is. That's the purpose of this show. Hopefully some kind of kick in the pants for content creators. My grandpa used to say kick in the pants all the time. I am definitely getting old. So I hope you feel this has helped you. And for me, I honestly have no plan for this show. I'm at that point where I don't need one. So that's great for me. I don't know whether we'll get to 550 or 600 or 1,000. But I do know that there will be an episode 501. And that episode will be next Monday, like it has been for so many Mondays in a row. If I could ask a favor of you, I would love to hear from you. Anything really about this episode or the podcast in general, so I can feed my ego a little bit. Instead of an email, which you can always send me at jp@zsquaredmedia.com, I would rather you go to my YouTube channel at Joe Pulizzi and go to this specific episode. Let me know who you are, what you're thinking, what you're struggling with, what you like, what you don't like. All this feedback has really, really helped me over the years. So thank you so much. And that's it. Just thanks. My love and my support to you, my fellow content entrepreneurs. Until next week, I'm Joe Polizzi.